The Inner Voice Show is a dialogue between the host and the listeners about their relationships. This show is not an attempt to assess, diagnose, or treat any mental health or illness condition. Please consult your physician, psychiatrist, or psychotherapist for personal matters.
Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inner Voice Show. Dr. Foojan, Zeine, and Heartfelt in studio. This is a show about what matters most in life: our mind, our thoughts, our feelings, actions, relationships, and our fulfillment in this beautiful journey of life. So in this show, I'll bring you the latest research about post-traumatic stress disorder and how do we get traumatized, because the study shows that a lot of people go through trauma, but they don't necessarily get post-traumatic stress disorder. Some of them go through the trauma and heal quickly after, and some people keep those symptoms for the rest of their life. So we're going to talk about that and the latest research that came out of Vermont University, actually December. So it's right off the press. And then I'll speak to Soheila Adelipour. She's the author of Dancing to the Darkest Light, a story of her life and dealings with multiple losses and how she has come through the losses and created happiness in her own world. And she wants to share that with all of you. You can call us on the studio line at 951-922-3532. 951-922-3532. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer it, or you could talk to Soheila or I. Now, be sure to listen to my podcast in iTunes or Stitcher and share it with your friends and ask questions, bring topics, things you want to hear about. I love to hear from you. And I hear from some of you and I pick up the topics from what you say and, call the authors that I know that you'd be interested in and talk about the things that you are interested in. So we'll be right back with the tip of the week.
Hello, I'm Dr. Foojan, and I have great news for you. I'm offering a special time-limited offer to anyone who's interested in online therapy or coaching sessions. I've developed the awareness integration model, which allows in only 12 weeks to raise your self-esteem and confidence and let go of your thoughts and emotions that produce depression and anxiety for you. So call today to schedule your online session and save $600. Call me today at 818-648-2140. That's 818-648-2140. Or go to www.foojan.com.
So this past week, I've been witnessing and working with a concept of regret. I've worked with some clients who have consistently gone back into sitting with their regret and cannot come out. And we've been really working this week with that. I remember the times that I had gone through the emotions and the thought process that produced regret. So regret about decisions that people have made in their lives that did not turn out well, or regret about the past that was great but turned to an unwanted present, regret about not taking the opportunity that were right in front of you, right there, but we didn't take it, didn't utilize it, and regret about the actions that were not taken to produce the desired result that we wanted, or it was our goal. We just talked about I should do this and I should do that, but never really did anything to create what I said I should. And then later on, we sit back and just ruminate step by step. When I don't have what I need, or when my expectation didn't come through, I'll just go back and ruminate. Now, the amount of time and attention that gets spent on these ruminations about regret are tremendous and does not produce any healthy results. All that produces is sadness, shame, helplessness, and a sense of guilt sometimes for people. So, from the awareness integration model that I created, and most of you know that it's already in this book, Life Reset, which you can go through the exercises, it's important to explore the thoughts and the beliefs that show up around regret. Regret isn't just one thing, it's a complex way of thinking about things. So, exploring all the thoughts, belief systems that are around regret, exploring the emotions, the feelings that get created every time we say those things to ourselves. Where is it in our body that we feel it? And in order for us not to ruminate and keep going back, it's important to look at that emotion and where it is in the body. Sitting down with your body, looking at where it is, really focusing on it, and letting yourself hear the message about whatever it was that at time, you did or did not do in order to move ahead with your decision. So let's learn from it. What was the message as you sit with your emotions of regret, as you really get in tune with them? What was the message for you? What were, at the time of whatever it is, the time that you made a decision to do something, what were those decisions? How come you made those decisions? Try to understand yourself and come up with some sort of a compassion about yourself at that time. And then let's see if there were a reason for what you did, what result you intended. What stopped you from creating that result? Let's have compassion for that person, for the you that made those results. You need to clean up? Clean up. If there was a person you hurt and they're no longer in your life, let's clean up. Is there a way that we could call them, write them a letter, text them, somehow clean up with them? If we choose not to because it just doesn't work, or that person is no longer in our life and we don't want to bring them in our life, or they're gone, passed away, and we can't, then, can we do that in our own head? Can we clean up in our own head with them and apologize even in your head, or apologize to them so we could be done with that? Invite a dialogue, whether you can do it shared with them, or you invite a dialogue, kind of like a monologue within your own self, and complete it. Write a letter to them, even if they're no longer available or you don't want to write. And if it's something about yourself that you didn't actually do, so it's not about anybody else that you have the regret, and the regret is about you not doing something, have compassion for the parts of you that decided not to, and explore what was it about that time that you chose not to do, and accept yourself. Now, learn from it, and let's move on. Now, let's create the vision of what it is you want to create. Maybe you didn't create it then, but let's create it now. And maybe the vision that you have today is very different than the vision you have then, because maybe you learned from it, right? So let's create that again. Create a vision. What do you want to create? What type of thinking and feeling and action is really required for you to get the result you want? Are you committed now to take those actions so that you won't produce regret later? Let's get on to it. Let's move on with it. And let's move on to what's important to do, getting the result that you want. And instead of sitting down and regretting what didn't, we don't need to go sit in a passive regret stage. We can get up and create whatever it is that you think you want, and create an action plan toward it and move forward. And anytime the regret shows up, then you can say powerfully, guess what? I'm doing something about it right now. So may you be free of regret and be blessed with all that you desire. We'll be right back with the latest research.
Join the conversation every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific for Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Dr. Foojan is a radio and TV host, international speaker, psychotherapist, life coach, and the author of Life Reset, the awareness path to create the life you want. She brings you the latest research and interviews with experts in the field of cognitive sciences. Anyone who loves to grow and create growth for humanity gets a voice on this call-in show. Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Monday afternoons at 3 p.m. Pacific on Smart Talk KMET 1490 AM and on KMET1490AM.com.
Welcome back, and latest research. Most people who experience severe trauma recover their health, but 23% develop post-traumatic stress disorder, a difficult to treat illness that combines intrusive thoughts about the trauma, avoidance of reminders of it, low mood, and an exaggerated startle reaction. Which trauma victims will develop the disorder and which will be spared is not well understood. A study done in the University of Vermont and just published in actually December in the journal Depression and Anxiety both offers new clues on identifying potential post-traumatic stress disorder candidates among the population of trauma sufferers and suggest potential interventions that could prevent its development. The study is the first to gather extensive data from trauma victims during the first 30 days after the traumatic event, which is the critical period. Getting post-traumatic stress disorder is not like the flu, where you wake up one day with a virus and feel sick. It's a complex system where the range of symptoms develop built on themselves and influence each other over time. After about a month, to die is cast. So to understand and prevent PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is very important to map the dynamic of how things develop early on. The nature of the disease has made that difficult. Researchers either had little access to trauma victims, who often left the hospital abruptly, or weren't comfortable being interviewed numerous times during the acute post-trauma phase, and that's within the 30 days of the trauma. The new study took a novel approach using a mobile phone app, a non-intrusive method of gathering information, and researchers were able to text trauma victims a series of questions, which they answered when it was convenient in each of the 30 days after the trauma event. The questions were crafted so they yielded day-by-day information about the key symptoms that characterized PTSD and were asked in such a way that researchers could track their development over time. Then the research team used a statistical technique called short-term dynamic modeling to determine which symptoms acted as influencers, causing other symptoms to develop and gain strength, which symptoms arose from those influencers and which operated independently. For one series of symptoms, the symptom chain looked a lot like fear. People first had intrusive, unpleasant thoughts about what happened to them, which led them to avoid doing things that remind them of their trauma. And that avoidance led to hypervigilance. The sequence reflects a commonly accepted theoretical framework for post-traumatic stress disorder development. But feelings of depression seem to operate independently of the fear of conditioning symptoms. Depression wasn't influenced by other symptoms and wasn't an influencer. It was off on its own and self-perpetuating. The most commonly used strategy right now is to wait and see. The research shows that, by contrast, as challenging as it is to treat victims soon after the trauma, it's critically important to intervene early to head off the development of full-blown post-traumatic stress disorder. Prevention is the preferred strategy because many individuals who go on to develop post-traumatic stress disorder do not seek out treatment right away. Instead, these folks can suffer for months or years before getting the help they need. The research suggests that intervention could happen along two tracks. On one hand, patients could undergo a form of exposure therapy, which you consistently go back and look at what happened, and then, bring down the fear and look at that you survived it, you have some power over it, and you let go of the powerlessness to address the fear-based cluster of symptoms. And on the other hand, a more cognitive-based approach could address developing depression, which the trauma victims are most likely to develop the PTSD. The research findings suggest that those who are having a strong reaction to trauma cues, who shortly after a trauma seem to be very reactive to things that remind them of their trauma, would probably be good people to look out for. Now, if you have suffered from a trauma or you have a family member, a friend who's suffering from trauma, immediately, please get them help with someone who focuses on trauma, a therapist who focuses on trauma, whether they have EMDR, hypnosis, or other type, because I think it's very important for for these people to have it, because physically also trauma holds in your body and you need to release that. After that, I think it's important also for the depression part to work with someone, because a lot of times when we're facing a life and death issue, there's a lot of mortality conversations, purposeful conversations, meaning of life, who am I, and the concept of who we are as a powerless human being constantly becomes, in the forefront of our head. And you don't need to live with this trauma. You can definitely work through and let it go. So I hope that if you are traumatized yourself or someone, you get help immediately. Let me introduce my next guest to you. And she's also been traumatized, but in a different way. She has a lot of loss and a lot of grief, and she's learned how to come out and heal herself. So we're going to talk to Soheila Adelipour. She's the author of Dancing to the Darkest Light, a remarkable true story of life, its extreme challenges and triumph over the ultimate heartbreak, a memoir based on her life and the series of unfortunate events, with the last chapter as a self-help for people that are dealing with challenges and difficulties. She received her bachelor's degree in business and her master's degree in art gallery management, while her first two kids were in diapers. She was involved with the world of arts and antiques in New York City, followed by running a high-end gift store. She has started the Stefan Adelipour for Life Foundation, a non-for-profit organization devoted to helping people in need, regardless of race, religion, and nationality. At the moment, Soheila's purpose is to give courage and strength to people with her words and her expression. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Soheila Adelipour.
Have you ever wished you could just wake up one day, reach across your nightstand, and hit the life reset button? Let's face it, the struggles and frustrations of everyday life leave millions of women and men around the globe yearning for a new way. And the new way is right here in Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want, by Dr. Foojan Zeine. You can get it now at Foojan.com or Amazon.com. Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want. You deserve it.
Join the conversation every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific for Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Dr. Foojan is a radio and TV host, international speaker, psychotherapist, life coach, and the author of Life Reset, the awareness path to create the life you want. She brings you the latest research and interviews with experts in the field of cognitive sciences. Anyone who loves to grow and create growth for humanity gets a voice on this call-in show. Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Monday afternoons at 3 p.m. Pacific on Smart Talk KMET 1490 AM and on KMET1490AM.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. Foojan, and I have great news for you. I'm offering a special time-limited offer to anyone who's interested in online therapy or coaching sessions. I've developed the awareness integration model, which allows in only 12 weeks to raise your self-esteem and confidence and let go of your thoughts and emotions that produce depression and anxiety for you. So call today to schedule your online session and save $600. Call me today at 818-648-2140. That's 818-648-2140, or go to www.foojan.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and I have Soheila Adelipour with me. She's the author of Dancing to the Darkest Light. Welcome to my show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Of course, of course. I know that you do have a book signing coming up in January.
It's Orange
Go ahead.
County. Yeah, in Orange County.
Yes. So we want to tell people to come and meet with you over there. I know that I've known you for a couple of years, and I've through the Iranian American Women's Foundation, and we were in Boston in actually Harvard Club together last month or October, or November, and you talked to, and I've heard you talk about your story and your life story and what has gone to the book. It was interesting. First of all, I want the listeners and the viewers to know that when I was reading your book, I first expected that all I was going to do, it was going to read and cry. And to my surprise, I laughed, I smiled, I cried, I felt sad, I was intrigued. And there was a lot of details of the stories of how, you have gone through immigration and areas that you've gone through that was really, really sweet. So for everyone who loves a story and a novel, you got everything in there. So definitely go get the Dancing to the Darkest Light. And then it has the Heartfelt experience of what has been going through, and then coming back to the light, and not only staying in the darkness. So first, tell me about what made you want to even write a book and your process of going through the book, and then we'll go to the book.
I didn't want to write a book. People tell me the author of the book, and I always correct them, and I tell them I'm not a writer. I think I'm just a storyteller, because I have a lot of respect for actual writers that went to school and they went through all that hardship of learning how to write. I just take 2 courses in creative writing because I thought I had a story to tell, which I had promised my brother while he was in the hospital. That we thought he's going to go home, that we're going to write a book together, because his story at the hospital was the first time in the medical world, the history of the medical world. Everything that happened to him was the first ever. So I told him, we should write a book together. And he said, yeah, when I go home, we're going to write a book together. And unfortunately, he never did make it back home. And I thought, what's the point of writing a book when it's the ending is not happy? But then there was a voice in my head that kept on telling me, you should write a book, you should write a book. And whenever something is difficult, I always visualize myself in my deathbed. Now I have long black hair, I have long white hair. And then over there, at the point of no return, I think, how sad would I be? How sorry would I be? If at the point that I had a chance to do something, I didn't do it. And now I'm at the point of no return and I cannot do it anymore. And I realized that I would be very sorry. So I decided, no matter how difficult it is, I'm going to write the book. And I did.
I love to use that technique. I think it's an amazing technique that you just talked about. And at the beginning of the show, we were talking about regret. And one way to not have regrets as we are getting older and in our deathbed is to really look at what it is that, there's a voice that calls us toward it, and what are the ways to do it. And you did. You took what was inside of you and a promise you had given to your brother. And, with all that was going on, you didn't have the skills. You took on some classes, and, you created an amazing book. You start the book with your conversation about your immigration to United States and going to New York, and you came here, let's say after the revolution was happening, and you talk about the loss that you did not want to come, your family didn't want to come, except your sister. There was one sister who wanted to come, but everybody else just did not want to live their homeland, and due to the revolution that you came. So you talked about what you had missed, what you had left. And you also talked about being a minority in a community that wasn't really looking upon the minority in a very, very high level, although that minority became, and not only survived, but became a great a great part of who they were in the community. And I'm sure that a lot of our listeners that they're listening, they can relate if they have migrated, or if they've gone, if they're from a minority group in the United States, where, at times, especially now, they're not looked upon favorably. Can you share your experience on that?
At the time that we migrated, it had come to a point. At the beginning, of course, we lived in a country that I'm sure you agree, it was a beautiful place to live. Mm-hmm. It was like living the way we both of us were dressed right now. We were dressed the same way, and we were made up the same way. It wasn't anything that people see on TV or on social media as a backward country. It was a beautiful place to live. And of course, we didn't want to leave, but it got to a point that it became very, very dangerous. And I'm a Jewish person in a Muslim country, and as a Jew, we have all these experiences of the first people that they go to get rid of are the Jews in that country. So we thought Khomeini is going to be the next Hitler. So what we have to leave this country because it looks very dangerous. Each one of us left with one luggage because that was the quota that we had. And whatever we could put in that one luggage, that's all we had. And of course, I don't want to get into the details of how I left, but we were happy to leave. At the end, we were very happy to live. And all of us, we were in a one-bedroom apartment in New York. And we were happy to be there too, because there were no threats, there were no danger, and there were no gunshots or Allah Akbars on the rooftops. And we landed in the land of opportunity. And my sisters and my brother and I, we were very young. So we were happy to be there. We were very happy to be here.
Yes, and it was interesting to read that even though that you are Jewish, and you came and first went into the New York neighborhood with the Jewish sect, that there was also this conversation that you just wanted to come to America, and being limited to just that area was not okay with you. You really wanted to open yourself up into the bigger community versus being in a smaller community. And it seems like you were questioning, because part of the conversation that I keep hearing in your book coming is this questioning of there's a faith that is there that innately is with you through generations. Also, there's this faith that you kept coming through your wording that, guardian angels are with us. We're being protected, through all the ups and downs, we're being protected. And then there are areas that you question intentionality of people, or all the struggle that you have to go through, and seeing, questioning the faith in God. And this is a theme that I kind of see throughout your conversation in the book.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I never questioned religion or God. I thought it was something that I was born into, and I had to respect that. But when the revolution happened in Iran, of course, I don't know if you remember it or not, but most of the 99.9% of the revolutionaries had a long beard, and they looked like they were followers of Khomeini. And, they weren't, definitely 100%, they weren't in a tie and a nice suit and nice shoes. They were all different. When I came to New York, because of my visa, I had to live with the religious Jewish groups, which is a story that happens in the book. And over there, I saw also that there were very fanatic religious groups as well, but it just happened to be Jewish and not Muslim. Of course, this group of people, they weren't violent and they weren't forcing anything upon anybody else, but they expected me to be just like them. And as I said in the book, I didn't think I came to the land of opportunity to be in this small group and marry a rabbi the way they wanted to. And I wanted to explore life, explore what was out there waiting for me. And my view about God has changed 50 folds as I grow older, because when the tragedies happened, and especially when I was at the hospital, as I wrote in the book, There was Matthew that was from the Muslim religion, and he was doing his prayers every day, and he prayed for my family, and he knew that I was Jewish. And there were Christian people that they had sick people there. And I realized there that, hospital is a very interesting place, because in those huge four walls of the hospital, there's just one God.
Yeah.
They're not different gods. There's just one God that everybody prays to, that they want their loved one to get well. There is no difference in any religion. It's not about religion. It's about that one God. And over there, I realized that, as I always say, a healthy person has 1,000 wishes, and the sick person has only one. Mm-hmm. And I realized after all these things that if we're among those lucky ones, that we are healthy, we have been granted that one wish that everybody's praying to. So how lucky are we that we are among those group of people, and nothing else after that matters.
Yes. Soheila, you lost your son, you lost your brother, and you lost your sister, and you lost your father. So they were four death within almost a 6-month period.
6 years.
6-year period with people who you loved, and they were very, very close to you. You share the experience you've had with each one of them, and all that you had to go through. I know that for everyone that I've ever known, the loss of a child is the most excruciating pain that any parent can go through. And you share that with us beautifully in the book, about your feelings, about your shock, about the disbelief, and about coming to terms with one of the toughest experience that you've ever had. Share that with us, please.
When the unthinkable happened to my son, my second son, I was in Europe with my two youngest sons, and I didn't know. Everybody else knew about the tragedy but me. And when I landed in New York, my brother and my family, they were waiting for me, and they told me the news. And of course, I was devastated, and I was yelling and screaming. And then really, after 10 minutes, I turned around and I looked at the horrors on my kids, on their faces. And honestly, at that second, it broke my heart, because I hope no parent would ever see such a thing. Besides the feeling of losing a child, the look on their faces is something that every time I remember, it's like a dagger in my heart. And right there, and right at that moment, I realized that, I have to be strong for them. Yes. Because they are young, very young. My youngest one was 8. My son that I lost was 22, and my oldest was 23. My first one was 23. The one I lost was 22. My third one was 15, and my last one was 8 at a time. And I decided, and I made a conscious decision at that point that, I have to do my best for my 3 other kids, because they look up to me. And I kept my promise to myself. And I tried to be the rock. I tried to be the caisson. I tried to be the safety net for them and the person to go to, because I didn't want to damage them for the rest of their lives. They're too young for that to happen. And I tried my best to do that. And I think, when a tragedy like that happened, I always say it's like amputating a leg. It's a huge shock. It's a huge pain. And obviously you cannot walk for a while. And time does not heal. Time, the sentence time, the phrase time heals is the biggest lie. Time never heals. Time just gives you the grace period that you need to work the rest of the muscles to compensate for the one that you do not have. Like when I wake up every morning and I want to step out of my bed, I realize that I'm losing one leg. But after all these years, I have created the muscles and the skills to be able to go about everyday life with just one leg left. And that's what time does. And honestly, I'm not just saying that, but at 1911 at the Louvre, somebody, one of the workers, he just thought that the Mona Lisa there belongs to an Italian artist. What is it doing at the Louvre? So he just took the painting, put it under his robe, and left the Louvre. For 2.5 years that the painting was missing, more people came to look at the bare wall with nothing on it and shake their heads in regret than all those years before that the painting was actually hanging in there. So what I decided to do, that every morning that I wake up, obviously I realize that one of my painting has been taken away from me. But if I make a slight effort and turn around, there are still 3 other walls that are masterpieces and beautiful things hanging on. And I don't waste my time staring at the wall in nostalgia and just cry over something that it's not there anymore. I try to put my focus on the 3 other walls and the rest of the masterpieces that are there and appreciate what I have and live for the whys in my life and not the why nots.
And when you were going through that, because I do hear that that's where you have ended up, but there's a process that we go through. And if you could share the process with our listeners, where if somebody is going through that type of a grief of losing their son, losing a member of a family, their mate, what are the process of, what are the words you had said to yourself? I've worked a lot with grief. I've worked actually recently with someone who had lost their son also. And, obviously when the shock is there and you're going through the shock and coming down, there's a lot that goes as far as thought process. And somehow we open those up and then finally land on something to be able to pull us up. We create a meaning, like what I hear from you. You created the meaning of, I have 3 more sons and I have to be the strong one. They can't lose me. They can't lose their brother and they can't lose me. So as a role model, as someone who's responsible for my children, I've got to get up and I find the strength to get up and move. What are some of the thought process in between until you get to that place, so that when people are listening, going through the same thing, they're like, yeah, I went that, I did that, I got that. And then yet this is what you created for yourself to move up.
I think a big part of it was that I didn't want to become a victim. I didn't want people to look at me and feel sorry for me. I did not want my story to be a horror story to everybody else. Because after what happened, I moved to Los Angeles because I couldn't stay in the same town and look at the same school and drive the same road. There were too many reminders. I had to move forward. So I did. It was not easy. My kids weren't happy about that, but I had to save myself. As I always say, it's the airplane rule. You put the mask on your face first and then your children. So would I do it again if I had known that my kids would be so unhappy? I'm not so sure. But at the time, abnormal reaction to abnormal situation is normal behavior, as they say. So at the time, that sounded like a good idea. And I didn't want to sound like...
And many people do, actually, Soheila. Many people advise, actually, that in order to facilitate the grief process is not to produce the same visual effect and the space consistently. So you did the right thing as far as what was going to be even given as an advice to you from a lot of people. But I do get that what you're saying is that all of those impacted your 3 children, and that was also part of the decision making.
So that was very, very difficult. It added actually to a lot of my grief, and added a lot of more sadness. But to be honest with you, it sounds like a cliche, but I always tell everybody, if you realize that you're color blue, which I was color blue, if you add yellow to it, some life to it, some happiness, do something that's right, do something that's good, it has no choice but turn into green. No choice if you add yellow to it. So I decided that's what I want to do. I don't want people to look at me and just see color blue. All I did was added, some other color to it. And now people look at, or as I said, and you were there when I said it, the sadness that I was carrying around was this huge ball and chain that I was dragging around with me. Of course, when my kids were looking at me, I wasn't hunching and I didn't look tired. I stood up straight, so I didn't want them to feel it, but I felt it because I was frustrated and depressed and angry all the time. And again, after a while, I decided that I have to melt this ball and chain, and I can make beautiful bracelet and necklaces if the weight of the metal on me is still the same. The look of it is not the same. I look at them and they don't look so ugly and so heavy. I look at them and I smile because it represents the love and the and memories that we shared. Everything that I did to get to where I am. I'm not saying I don't cry. I was sobbing 2 days ago when I was talking to one of my son's friends on the phone, but I do not let that define me. Mm-hmm. I do not want the tragedies and what happened to define me. I want to be a product of my own decisions and my own behavior, not the product of what has happened to me and my family. Mm-hmm. I don't want this, whatever this is, whatever that happened, to make a bitter person out of me. I want whatever happened to make a better person out of me. Mm-hmm. And everything that I did, it was a conscious decision. And I'm just like going to the gym, I made it a practice.
Mm-hmm. Which is very important, what you just said, that it isn't just shifting or waiting for it to happen from the outside, that we have a very, very determined intention and action and putting into a practice when we are part of the recovery from our grief. If we just allow grief to sit there and for, time, as you said, or life or something else to come in and give us the light and move us up, we're going to be sitting in it for a long time. And even if people try, I'm not going to come out. But the determination of, yes, I have lost. Yes, I have the experience of loss. And yet I also want to live. I'm alive. The other person is gone or dead, but I'm alive and I need to live. And the concept of bringing the yellow into the blue and bringing life into what is. Now, share with us also, because your brother and sister were also very, very close to you, and going through one hardship where you're really going down and then the next one and the next one hits, because one of these will create a lot of sorrow for people and kind of changes their life. You had three of them, kind of like back to back to each other. Share with us what happened for you as you try to bring yourself up to one, and then the next one happens, and then as you're bringing yourself up, and then the next one happens.
Unfortunately, which my other two sisters and I, we always talk about it. When we lost our sister, life didn't give us a chance to grieve for her, as if her life didn't matter, because we went directly from the cemetery after her burial. We took a cab and we went directly to Mount Sinai Hospital to visit our brother, directly. So we honestly, as if we closed that chapter and now we had to take it, which was the right thing to do at the time, because there was nothing else we could do for our sisters. Now it was time to take care of her brother. But it is sad because it feels like her life didn't matter because none of us had a chance to grieve about that. However, in what happened after I lost our brother, which was a Friday night, and on Friday night for Jewish people, from Friday night to Saturday night, we're not allowed to do anything because it's a holy day. So he died 9/20 Friday night of Thanksgiving. And to him, it was the most important holiday. And Saturday morning, I woke up and I couldn't do anything. We couldn't even go to his burial because it was supposed to be done on Sunday. So I called my kids and I said, guys, let's go shopping at Saks. There's a great sale going, and then we're going to go have lunch. And they probably thought their mom had gone crazy. But I realized something at the moment that I lost my brother, which I loved my brother the way any mother could love a child. Honestly, my brother and I, we were one soul in two bodies. I realized that when I lost my son, my brother was always there for me, always. He was my rock. And I thought, would I ever think that I would lose him too? I would never. I honestly never thought that one day I would sit down and, cry for his loss. So, you never know what's going to happen next. And I should, again, now I know the hard way that I should pay attention to people that I have. Because look what happened to my brother that was there for me. When I lost my son, he was constantly with me, taking care of me. And now he's gone too. So I honestly, we don't know what's happening the next day. We have no idea what's happening the next day. And life is too precious. Now I know more than anybody else around me how precious life is. So I have to enjoy and appreciate the living ones that I have. And not to, again, go look at the bare wall and shake my head in sorrow. And right there and then, I called my kids 12 hours after I lost my brother, and we went shopping, and we went to lunch in New York City, and we had lunch, and we talked about everything. We talked about whatever has happened. Every subject was allowed, so my kids could open up, and they still could see that life goes on. Life goes on, even you don't want life to go on. Sometimes the saddest part is that you wake up in the morning and you think life should stop now. And you think, no, life is going on and you should go on with it.
One of the things that shows up for me as you're talking, because right before you came on, I was talking about this latest research that has come up with about post-traumatic stress and how the phase of the depression is different. And I was listening to you, and I was listening to see there was never a depression there. There's always sadness, there's grief.
Yes.
But the state of depression never happened. And what I sense from you is you didn't allow the depression to happen because you created the hope at every second. And people go into depression after the grief because it's not just the loss that they experience, but they also extend this loss into the future and generalize it to everyone and life as its, life's meaning. And the expectation somehow that, life was promised me that it was always going to be amazing and flowery, and it's not. So therefore, I'm done with life, or I'm done with God, or I'm done with me. And that's what produces and creates depression and stays and takes a grief process into a very much of a complicated grief process because we add all of these things to it. And as I'm listening to you and I read your book, it was like, well, what is the component that you had the ability to grieve, but you also had the ability not to take yourself into a depression space and bring it out? Anybody in your position would literally, high percentage could go and just sit into the depressive stage and not come out and give up completely. But the part that I'm hearing from you is, and you bring it into different beautiful analogies, examples of things that you put in. But the point is gratitude, coming back into what's reality in front of me right now. I lost something, but what do I have? How to cherish it, how to be involved in life versus isolating and moving to the past. It's like something happens and you immediately get involved. I lost my brother. I lost my sister, but let me go attend to my brother who is at this time ill, and let us have every moment with him. And then you lose your brother, and it's like, oh, I have 3 sons. Let me enjoy every minute with them and things that they enjoy and they want. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about reality of what is, but let's also enjoy each other. So it's this involvement with life that I hear you that you're committed to, which takes you away from a depressive state, which many people naturally might put themselves in?
Well, you have two choices. But thank you for saying that, actually. Thank you, because that makes me feel very good. But there are two choices. You can go on living or you can go on dying. There are two choices. And I chose to live, not just to exist, but to live. Mm-hmm. And the fact of the matter is, we think we are very special, us as human beings. And we think that happily ever after should be our story, which happily ever after is always just a fairy tale story. It was never any human being story because it does not exist. And the fact that in this country especially, happiness is a right makes the depression much easier to come, I think, because as soon as you're unhappy, you think, why am I unhappy? It's my right to be happy and things should be going my way. And as a result of feeling unhappy about being unhappy, you become more unhappy. And little by little, you go into depression, into sadness and then depression, which I don't understand depression because I know some people are clinically depressed, but I think depression is a state for people, for a lot of people is you allow yourself, you go down that road and the end of the road is depression. When we're not talking about the one that are clinically depressed, we're talking about the people that unhappiness becomes sadness, severe sadness, and then severe sadness becomes depression. And then right after that, there are pills that are, given to that person. And as I always say, as an example of the lobster, you give them pills and they don't understand what the problem is and what is the issue that's making them sad. They forget about that because they're too sedated to know what that problem is to take care of it. And it becomes a vicious cycle. And I just go down that road.
I want to read this paragraph, which is in page 332. You say, imagine an ocean in all its grandness and splendor. The ocean waves never cease to move, always forward, one wave after the other, through the light of the day and the pure dark of the night. In the heat of the summer and the cold of the winter, the ocean keeps on creating endless waves. This is something that it's important for everyone who's listening and viewing us to really capture that in the midst of unfathomable agony and stress and something that happens to us that is really not our doing. It's something that for almost everybody might feel like it's unfair. Why is it happening to me? Why is it happening to me constantly? And I think that this is what I heard from your life, that although you were constantly moving forward, creating and everything that was in your control, you were moving ahead. There were so many circumstances of revolution, immigration, losses one after another. And you were able to uphold who you were and keep choosing life and keep choosing happiness over depression. So I want to thank you. I think your message is great. I want all of you who are listening, go get her book, Soheila Adelipour, the author of Dancing to the Darkest Light. Thank you, Soheila, for being in my show and creating an amazing, amazing message of your life and sharing your life with me and all of my audience. And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing world for yourself and everyone around you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Inner Voice Show is a dialogue between the host and the listeners about their relationships. This show is not an attempt to assess, diagnose, or treat any mental health or illness condition. Please consult your physician, psychiatrist, or psychotherapist for personal matters.
KMET Banning.
From ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger. Boeing had hoped to get FAA okay to put its 737 MAX back in the air. The jet's been grounded since 2 deadly crashes, and now the jet maker says it's going to temporarily stop production on the troubled plane.
A statement from Boeing says safety is its first priority, that it's cooperating with regulators, determining appropriate training requirements for the 737 MAX, and will make sure everyone, including the public, will have confidence in the model's updates. An FAA statement says it doesn't comment on Boeing business decisions, but is following a thorough process with international safety regulators for returning the 737 MAX to service.
ABC's Chuck Severson. Tomorrow, the House Rules Committee will review 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump. The panel will then map out the parameters for Wednesday's full House debate and expected to vote. Confusion over an announced U.S. troop withdrawal in Afghanistan. Here's ABC's Andy Field.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham traveling to Afghanistan and announcing that President Trump will send 4,400 troops back.